And welcome to the Franchise Tag Podcast with me, your host, Freddie Hall. I hope you're doing all okay this evening. Welcome back, Adam. Welcome back, Andrew. Back for another Mock the Mock, just as promised. Though it's not Mock and Mock in the title, it's maybe a little bit more accusatory towards Peter Schragers Mock Draft, which we'll probably find out in a minute why we've sort of said it's a crazy mock draft. But we've done a few of these Mock the Mocks already. They've been really good. A lot of people have been watching them, which has been great. Thank you for all the support. I'm sure Andrew and Adam have really enjoyed doing these as well. And today we're going to look at Peter Schragers' first mock draft. He is only doing two. This one does contain trades as well. So unlike the one we did last week, which didn't have any trades and was a little bit, I suppose, older, this one has come back out in the last few dadays. So it's got the most up-to-date news in there as well, I suppose, it's been happening around the NFL. But in true Peter Schragers true Peter Schragers fashion, it's not exactly the most normal or maybe accurate mock draft we've ever seen, but it's got a lot of really good fun twists and turns, which will be really enjoy chatting about this evening. Peter Schragers of Good Morning Football, one of the predominant faces of the NFL in America. Always seems like a really great guy. Peter Schragers, if you do watch this, feel free to you'll be always welcome on this show, and we probably won't get ridiculed as much if you were on the show, then we will maybe ridicule the mock draft that you do.
He can come on whenever he likes, given who he's given back the Packers, so that's fine. Whenever he wants to turn up.
And I also think there's a strong possibility he might listen to the show, because some of the people he's got on here are people I've been saying, oh yeah, they're round one talent. No one's got all of a sudden they're in his mock draft.
Peter Schragers with a finger on the pulse on all things Franchise Tag Podcast. You heard it here first, folks. But without further ado, Andrew, if you want to get Peter Schragers' mock draft up, we will start dissecting it and looking at it. Like we said, there is trades in this one, and there's going to be a few twists and turns. You can see from the headline straight away, Texans trade out the number 2 pick, 5 quarterbacks taken in the first 12 picks. This is sure to be a whirlwind and a lot of fun. So without further ado, let's go to the number 1 pick held by the Carolina Panthers. And no surprises just yet. Bryce Young, quarterback from Alabama, going to the Carolina Panthers straight away. Andrew, I think we'll do... no, last time, Andrew, you took the odds, so we'll go Adam this time to take the odds, I suppose. So, Adam, Bryce Young going to Carolina Panthers straight away. Don't feel like we need to stay too long on this. Pretty obvious one. A lot of people had CJ Stroud, but Peter Schragers off the bat pretty much steering the course that we all think.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense. I think Bryce Young cancelled all his other visits, didn't he, to a lot of the other teams. So yeah, I think this seems like a pretty nailed on one. And you've got the 2021 Heisman Trophy winner there, so it's not a bad number 1 pick.
Yeah, the closer and closer we seem to get to the draft, this seems to be what everybody's now locking in. They've moved away from the CJ Stroud now after that Josh McCown chat about playing tennis. And it seems to be Bryce Young that's the guy that's cemented in. If you listen to Schragers' interview when he was talking about this, he calls him a blue chip player. So I think that's why he says he's the only blue chip quarterback in this draft. So
bold statement. Let's move on to the number 2 pick. And like we said in the tagline, I suppose, the Texans trade out of it, Andrew, and the Houston Texans have traded with the Indianapolis Colts. Obviously, it's not going to give us a breakdown of picks for picks or if players get moved or anything like that. It is just simply the Colts moving up from the number 5 spot, I believe, up to the CJ Stroud, up to number 2, and taking CJ Stroud, quarterback out of Ohio State, the quarterback which you love so much. And a lot of the NFL analysts have been projecting the Colts to move up, Schragers being one of them now as well. It's just been more to like the 3rd pick because they haven't seen the Texans moving out. They've seen the Cardinals as a team that are probably going to trade out more than the Texans would, because the Texans also very quarterback needy, I suppose, if you don't see Davis Mills as your future. But Peter Schragers taking the Colts. Do you think Schragers got onto something here with the Colts moving up to this number 2 spot and the Texans wanting to take the call?
I think he's onto something with the Colts maybe moving up, maybe to 3, but not to 2. I mean, there's been a lot of chat over the last week and a half that the Texans aren't completely sold on taking a quarterback this year. And you can see probably from the write-up just there that he has said that he thinks trading DeForest Buckner for the pick and swapping picks would be ideal. I just don't see how that works with the Texans, who are a divisional rival. So there's so much at stake with this trade, because if CJ Stroud hits and is incredible and dominates the league for the next sort of 5 years, the Texans traded to their rivals thinking he wasn't good enough. So someone's getting fired back a house really there if that doesn't work. So to anybody else other than the Colts maybe, but for me, not to the Colts. But if the Colts are moving up and taking CJ Stroud, we all know that they need a quarterback. So quarterback is the right pick for them if they are moving up to 2. And CJ Stroud for me is the guy. I just can't see divisional rivals moving for a franchise player, if you like.
Yeah, I feel like Schragers maybe swung for the fences here and maybe made a bit of a miss, because I can't see the Colts and Texans in division trading, and especially the Texans handing the Colts' future on a plate. Getting DeForest Buckner back is pretty good. I mean, for the Texans still probably they could go Anthony Richardson or Will Levis, so they could get their quarterback of the future and have DeForest Buckner, I suppose. But Buckner, wrong side of 27, expensive as well. They'd have to take on a lot of that contract. It'd be certainly a very interesting move if the Texans say this. And the Texans have been known for doing some wild moves. So that's the only thing I can't rule out is the Texans making what in my book would be a bit of an idiotic move. Going on to pick 3, Arizona Cardinals. Holding on to the pick there. Again, no surprises here, Adam. Will Anderson, edge out of Alabama, going to Arizona Cardinals, something we've seen in a lot of mock drafts so far, and Schragers not straying from the needle here.
No, it seems like a pretty logical one when you think of where they are. I think especially if Bryce Young and CJ Stroud have gone, I don't know if anyone is going to want to make a massive move up in order to get one of the other quarterbacks. It kind of feels that they're going to struggle to trade this pick away, despite the fact that they'd probably like to. So I think Will Anderson kind of makes sense. We've had him as the best edge rusher, haven't we, throughout most of this process? So it would be surprising if Will Anderson wasn't the first one to go, despite all the hype that is currently around Tyree Wilson. So yeah, I think it makes sense to go for Will Anderson at Arizona, and again, another player who is considered a blue chip standard talent. So yeah, makes perfect sense.
It's hard not to love him as well, because he's been doing a lot of interviews lately, and if you've watched them, you when you listen to him and you hear him chat, you fall in love with him off field as well as on field. So it just seems great.
This conversation hasn't really been had, but we were all talking about teams trading up to go and get a quarterback. Do you think there could be a legitimate thing where the Cardinals maybe don't see Will Anderson as their needle mover, and that a team would potentially move up to go get Will Anderson?
I don't know. I suppose you might find that it just feels like it would be a bit of a strange move to give up as much as you would have to in order to get up there. I suppose that would be the problem. You really only see it for quarterbacks normally, don't you? You don't normally see it for anyone else. So I think because of that, it would be strange. But I mean, this guy, he is pretty loved amongst most of the teams, and all the interviews have gone really, really well with him. Everyone likes him. So you might find someone has a go, but I can't imagine that you're going to get anyone give up too much for it.
Just for a bit of rumor mill on this, just Fred's brought it up as a topic. I read a rumor today. Now, it's not from a reputable source or like anything like that, so don't read anything into it. But I read that the Steelers are apparently open to trading up to get Jalen Carter if he's available, if he's not picked within the first sort of 5-6 picks. So a bit of interesting about somebody moving up for a defender, not a quarterback. So.
As much as I think Jalen Carter could be a sensational talent, and this is nothing to do with the off-field stuff, I hate that for us. I as much as it would be exciting, that's not where we need to be looking, I don't think. Anyway, we move on to pick 4, the Houston Texans pick now because of the Indianapolis Colts trading, and they don't go quarterback here. So they weren't set on having a quarterback. They maybe were in love with Bryce Young. Bryce Young goes. They're not in love with CJ Stroud. Schragers has them move into the trading picks with the Colts, and also getting in, I suppose, DeForest Buckner. Then they go and draft Tyree Wilson, even though Will Levis and Anthony Richardson are still on the board. What are we thinking of this, Andrew, if the Texans did decide to do this trade?
Yeah, if you're trading down because you don't want a quarterback, then going out and getting one of the most sort of highly anticipated players. You know, a lot of people are saying like Trayvon Walker style sort of buzz about him with this guy. So when you look at everybody's mock drafts for the Texans for the 2 picks, some have got quarterback, wide receiver, some have got best defensive player and quarterback. So they're definitely the needs that they'll be looking at. And if quarterback is not high on their board after Bryce Young's gone, then this is the perfect pick for them at that spot, I believe.
I think going to doing this trade and getting to this point and having the players that have gone, I think this is a very sound pick. If you are going, right, we're not in love with Will Levis, we're not in love with Anthony Richardson, we'll wait till next year, we're happy to rock with Davis Mills. This is a very sound pick, I think. And though it's Schragers done this wild trade, he's made a very sound. The both picks are pretty reasonable, I suppose, with this trade. We move on to pick 5, which is the Seattle Seahawks pick, and this one's quite surprising, but not entirely surprising all at the same time, I suppose. Adam, Seattle Seahawks here. A lot of people have mocked Jalen Carter going to this point if he was here, but Anthony Richardson of the quarterback out of Florida, who really impressed at the combine. A lot of question marks about how far he could go. Everyone loves his raw athleticism. But the Seattle Seahawks taking quarterback here, that Geno Smith really impressed last year. I know he's not the future, but do you think this is a reasonable pick here?
So I think it makes sense. I can understand where he's coming from, because obviously the idea, and he's written it there, is that, you know, they don't plan on being in this position anytime soon. And with the team that they have there at the moment, you can understand why that would be the case. So if you've got any chance of getting a quarterback who's like a really good quality one, this would make sense. It also makes sense because obviously you're probably not going to play him this year because you've got Geno Smith, so he can sit behind Geno, who's going to be a great quarterback to sit behind, who will help him out, teach him, and be able to get him ready when he's actually ready to play. So in that respect, it does make a lot of sense. I suppose it depends whether you feel like it's one of these things, isn't it, where it's very much, are you going all in now, or are you sort of looking towards the future a little bit, in which case I feel like they should probably be looking to go all in now, to be honest. They've got these picks where they can bring in, you know, they've got another one in the first round. They can have 2 really good players. Kind of feel like they did really well in the draft last year. No reason why they can't have a good draft this year. It feels like they're going the right way. I just don't know if this is necessarily I think this is more one for the future. But then you could argue they've got 2 picks, so that's how come they can do this. So it's really, I get it, but I think for me, I would probably be looking at D-line for them. So Jalen Carter is where I'd be going.
Just to sort of piggyback off the back of Adam's comments, I had Anthony Richardson going to the Seahawks with their, was it 20th pick they've got later on?
Yeah.
On my first ever mock draft. So I really love the fit for the Seahawks. I think it's perfect. I think if I was Anthony Richardson as well, that's where I'd like to land as well, having a mentor for the year as well. And, you know, the likes of DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, and good running back system there as well. I think it fits for both teams. Adam, what I wanted to ask you, because after seeing this, I really, really like it. We've done lots of mock drafts recently, and we've talked about players. The likes of Kalijah Cansey, Van Ness, and people like that have been available around that 20 mark when we've been doing them. So is it worth gambling this and then taking someone who hasn't got the off-field issues later on in the draft? You know, there's a lot of value back down near the 20 for interior sort of defensive linemen.
Yeah, I mean, this is the it's not their pick, is it? You know, so that is the thing. It is their sort of like, if they really want to, as I said, they can go for this. This is their luxury pick. And so they can go down this route with the quarterback situation that they've got. It's just a matter of whether you want 2 really good, steady players that are ready for now, or whether you want one like that you'll get on the 20th pick, and then this one you can be for the future. I suppose to a certain extent, because they've got the 2 picks, a little bit like the Eagles, if they wanted to go down that route, they can have their cake and eat it, sort of thing. So it is something that they can do if they want to. It's just going to be really I mean, it's really going to be what they think of, isn't it, at the time, whether they're going to be willing to sort of almost push a little bit down the road. Richardson has the potential to be an amazing quarterback. So you sort of think that's why this makes sense. But at the same time, it depends if you want to go all in with Gino or not.
I've got one theory that in the last few days, I'm not confident this has just already come to me. You know what would be cheaper than taking Anthony Richardson at 5? Trading for Trey Lance. And taking,
well, again,
if you took Carter here, I don't think the 49ers get the 5th pick for Trey Lance. As much as they trade up and got him at 3rd, he is not worth that now. And in comparison, Richardson to Trey Lance, I mean, I'm not educated enough to be able to say who's the better quarterback and stuff like that. But the cheaper route with a player that's similar in the attributes, I think you could go out and get Trey Lance for cheaper and get your future defensive star at this pick. And get it at the 20th pick if they had a corner. Deontay Banks at the 20th or something like that as well. Geez, or Lucas Van Ness if he was down at the 20th. If you could get Jalen Carter and Van Ness, wow. Or Miles Murphy even at that pick.
I think the only issue with Trey Lance is that obviously he hasn't played a lot of football in 3 years now. This is where the problem is. And I understand that Richardson is very rusty and not the most accurate quarterback out there. But he is in the routine of playing lots of games. And I just feel like that is probably something where, it does mean that he's going to have to sit for a year behind Gino. But at the same time, I think that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for him. The idea of going all in with a guy like as your future, it is the cheaper option. I agree with you, but I can't see them going down that route when you've got this kind of physical specimen of a quarterback that's really just something that we haven't really seen before.
Yeah, there's more upside with Richardson than Trey Lance for me. So.
Okay, it's an interesting theory I've just thought of. Move on to the pick 6. I'm sure a lot of you have spotted it by now, but Schragers got a pick that I will certainly like because I have ranted about how much this pick makes a load of sense for the Detroit Lions, and I think they will go as route. Adam thinks opposite to me. Thinks the Lions aren't interested in him at all. But Andrew, what do you think of Jalen Carter going here? Doesn't fall out of the top 10 like some people are sort of thinking he may do. But he does fall out of the top 5. But going to the Detroit Lions, how much does that improve them?
Yeah, I don't think he drops outside the top 10. I've said that a lot on here. You really like this pick. You've had this one locked in. I think if they hadn't have traded Jeff Okudah, then maybe this would be the correct pick. But I'm not sure whether they need to go out and get themselves the best cornerback. But we have said there's a lot of cornerbacks and it's quite deep in class for cornerbacks. So they could, again, get someone a little bit later on with that pick. So it doesn't, again, I think this is another luxury pick, isn't it? Do you want the best D lineman or do you want the best cornerback? Take your pick, go with which one you want. And Jalen Carter is another one of those blue chip players, isn't he? So go out and get him. We know he's a cut above the rest. So go and get him over who you think might be the best cornerback, because there's 2 or 3 names that are rumbling of which one is the best. So you know this guy's better than everyone else.
We go on 7, and Adam, someone who always thinks the Raiders don't make the best move, Schragers thinks they will keep a level head on and take what some people are arguing is the best O-lineman in the draft, in Peter Scragers out of Northwestern. Do you think the Raiders will make the sensible pick here, or will they do what they've done with a lot of their first round picks?
I mean, it's the sensible pick. It makes sense. It's the one that they need to make, to be brutally honest. I mean, that O-line has got quite a few holes on it and it needs to happen. They do have some D-line problems as well, but I think O-line is definitely more important to them. You know, they need to make that better for the likes of Josh Jacobs and that for that to happen. So I think it's the way forward. I don't know if he's necessarily the best O-lineman in this draft, but I think he's probably the most versatile. So I think because of that, that's probably why they've gone for him. So yeah, it makes sense, but it is the Raiders. So who knows?
Moving on to pick 8, the Atlanta Falcons pick, and they have got, and Schragers got here, them taking Nolan Smith, the edge out of Georgia, someone who immensely impressed at the combine. Andrew, do you think Schragers maybe got on the hype train a little bit for Nolan Smith here? I mean, I certainly think he could go. I think he could go 10th to the Philadelphia Eagles personally. But do you think this is maybe a little bit high, or is Schragers know something but we don't know about how much this guy got really? His stock got blown up a lot in the combine.
Yeah, I don't. He's a tough guy to evaluate when it comes to him being picked at 8, because we all agree that he's a phenomenal talent. There's just been those question marks of, is he a phenomenal talent because he's a generational talent, or is he a phenomenal talent because he's in the Georgia system that makes all the defenders they've got showcase? And then you go, he wasn't as good as the previous ones that have been in, but his combine was insane. But what I do really like about this is when you're going after Nolan Smith, you get in a very versatile player. When you talk about, we talk about a lot about Van Ness. He's been talked about a lot, where he can play edge and interior. Well, with Nolan Smith, you've got that type of guy that can play edge and linebacker. So you're looking along that Hassan Reddick, sort of Micah Parsons sort of style player. So you're covering a lot of the field with a great talent across the. So there's lots of upside, lots of talent, and that's exactly what the Falcons need, because they've got a lot of holes on that defense. Yeah. So I like the pick, and I personally believe he's a great talent. It wasn't just Georgia that made him good.
It feels like the Falcons here have a lot of holes to fill, and picking him, they actually fill 2 holes in the linebacker and an edge rather than just taking a pure edge. And Falcons really need some talent that will make your head turn, and I think Nolan Smith might be that guy. I was just about to say, very surprising with no cornerbacks have gone off the board yet, but Chicago Bears, who originally had the number 1 pick, trade down with the Panthers obviously earlier in the season. Adam, this is the first cornerback off the board, Christian Gonzalez. A lot of people have the Oregon cornerback going at the Lions pick. A lot of people haven't been the first corner off the board. Devin Witherspoon, he has got that. He could go before Illinois cornerback Devin Witherspoon. But Schragers has decided to opt for Christian Gonzalez. No surprise here, really, with this pick. I don't think, for Chicago Bears at 9.
No, I think he's great player. Definitely one that a lot of people would want in their team. So yeah, completely agree that Gonzalez is someone to have. I'm a little surprised they haven't gone O-line. I would have thought that they want to sort of, the most important thing is to help Justin Fields and keep him up, right? I would have thought that would be the most important one. Maybe with Skoronski off the board, that's why they've gone for Gonzalez in this. But, you've got Broderick Jones, you've got Paris Johnson. They're both pretty good O-linemen. And like I said, when I was talking about Skoronski, I think you could argue that the others might actually be better in their respective positions on the O-line. So I'm a little surprised that they've gone corner, but at the same time, as Schragers says, there's so many needs on this team, and this is one for the future. So it's a good player. Everyone would want him. I just would have thought they'd probably go O-line.
And especially when you look at the corners that were drafted last year that made such... I'm not playing Christian Gonzalez, people like Sauce Gardner, but a lot of the cornerbacks came out last year, even in the later rounds, were incredible. Like Tyreek Woolen for the Seahawks. They completely changed the dynamic of their defense, and maybe that's a line of thinking that is along with this sort of pick. Yeah,
that's the other thing, isn't it? Because obviously the corner class is quite deep this year, and they've got. Am I right? They've got 2 picks at the beginning of the second round. Is that right, or 1 pick at the beginning of the second round?
No, we've got their pick at the start of the second.
Oh, okay, right.
Steelers had that for Chase Claypool.
Yeah, so yeah. I would have thought that they would be able to still get a decent corner going backwards, but then quite a few do go off at the end of the first, and maybe that's why they've gone for it. But yeah, I just feel like O-line would have made a little bit more sense.
Mm-hmm. We'll go on to pick 10 then now. Changing up the pace for Philadelphia Eagles, who, wow, swing and hit this one as well. Bijan Robinson, 2 of the last mocks, going very high, running back out of Texas. Andrew, you're going to be very happy about this pick, but at the same time, it's going to really hurt you because that's the Philadelphia Eagles.
Did you say very happy about this pick?
Well, I thought you'd be. I immediately was like, you'll be really happy. He's gone in the top 10. He's gone in the top 10, and then I was like, oh, but it is going to the Eagles. So, how much would you hate this if Schragers is correct?
Massively. Massively. This has happened with the past sort of like 3 or 4 drafts. I've seen the picks that the Eagles and the Cowboys have locked in, like in mock drafts, and I'm going, oh, I really like that player. Why is he going there? What do we all think about this? Because the Eagles don't really ever value the running back market. They're happy to swap and change. They're happy for committee. This seems very high for them to go for a running back. But as I've said, I've listened to a short video of Schragers defending why he's picked these players, and his reasons were Harry Roseman, when everybody zigs, he zags. So everyone's expecting them to take someone else, and he's going to take the blue chip superstar generational running back because no one's expecting it. So that's his reasoning behind it. That's his full reasoning. But I think it helps them. A superstar running back would push that team to the next level. They've got the wide receivers, they've got the quarterback, they've got a good O-line, they've got a bit of future on that O-line with some of the youngsters they brought in. So I don't hate it for them as a neutral. I think it's a great pick. But do we think they have now value in the position?
I don't get it. They have a star running back. They have a star running back. That's what everyone told me when he signed there. They have a star running back. Rashard Penny. They've got Rashard Penny, who's a generational running back, #1 on every dynasty draft, fantasy football wise. You need to go and get Rashard Penny. That's what everyone told us when Rashard Penny went there. This is a very. I don't think this will happen. I just cannot see it. I think this is such not a waste of a pick at all, because Bijan Robinson is a transformational talent, but I just don't think this is going to happen at all. It's really this is the one pick where I'm like, nah, I'm out on this.
I so want this to happen. We so want this. This is the chaos that you want on draft night, and just to see Andrew's little face explode is exactly what we want. It's their weak spot, to be brutally honest. It really is. And if you could put him in there to replace Miles Sanders, then that would be great. And behind that O-line with them receivers as well, there's no weakness there if you were to do that. This is where I believe, if you think that Seattle are going to be willing to go for someone like Anthony Richardson and kind of go outside the box and go for the explosive player first because they've got 2 picks and go for the steady one later, this is exactly the same. There's no difference in this. This is the same mentality. So I think if you think that is the sort of thing that's going to happen, it could happen. And I know that both Mal Kiper and Todd McShay did a mock draft as well, and they had Bijan going at 10. And it does feel like there is a lot of momentum behind this. It is the one spot that you do feel like, they're pretty stacked across the board. But with Miles Sanders gone, they do have a gap at running back. And the only thing that is stopping this from making sense is that the running back class is pretty strong. So they could go back and do it later on. So they could do that. But the one thing I would... It's not Bijan, so that's the difference. They want to win now. It makes sense.
We previously just said that the Seahawks could take Richardson at 5 because we know later on in the draft there's some good interior defensive linemen. So the exact same scenario fits for the Eagles. We all believe that their weak spot is that interior defensive line where they had to bring in Ndamukong Suh. And who else did they brought? Linval Joseph, was it Joseph they brought in? They brought in a couple of older veterans to support Jordan Davis. So we know there's a hole there, but we've already just said Seahawks can do it later, so Eagles can do it later. So this pick for me is what pushes them to the next level, and they were runners up last year. So his next level, this could mean they could win.
I cannot buy this pick, but that's not me saying that it couldn't happen. I just don't agree with it personally. Pick number 11, the Tennessee Titans, and this is we had 3 quarterbacks go already. So I was trying to keep count of how many got, and now Tennessee Titans they took a quarterback last year, Malik Willis, but now they take Hendon Hooker Adam, I'm very excited about Hendon Hooker. I watched him playing. I think he's really good. Had his injury problems last year, unfortunately. I was out for a large portion of the season. Titans, there's a lot of rumors they want to move on from Ryan Tannehill. They obviously took Malik Willis last year. I don't want to say didn't pan out because I don't think he's been given enough time as such. But I mean, this is a big swing for Hendon Hooker here, being in the first round to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, I love the fact that because Hendon Hooker should be at this sort of point anyway. I mean, we all saw what he did for Tennessee before he got injured. I mean, when
I said getting into the first round, I know all three of us don't think that way, but I know the mass majority do feel that way.
I think to be honest, you were looking at the Heisman winner before he got injured. That was kind of where it was going. So he is a quarterback who has the talent to be in this position. The only thing I would argue is I don't know whether they necessarily need to make this pick here. You know, I mean, I don't know if he's necessarily a first round pick because of the injury, which has put a lot of people off. He is a little bit older compared to the other quarterbacks. So there's a lot of teams put off by this guy. But at the same time, you know, you look and there's not many more quarterbacks left. So if any, and there are teams that need them. So you do sort of think you should probably go for it. Love the fact that he's a Tennessee boy. You know, played for them at college, played for them in the NFL. I think it's a great idea. Malik Willis was clearly someone who I think he needed time. You couldn't just throw him in. It didn't work. So it's a bit of a mess. So yeah, I think it's a really good pick.
I think it's it's good to point out that obviously Will Levis hasn't gone at this point, has he? He's still on the board. I think
and nor should he. Hooker should be going before him anyway. So
this is what I'm going to say. When you take away the age and the injury, because Will Levis had 2 injuries last year. He had his foot injury and he had his shoulder, pectoral shoulder. One of them he tore something, and he had his injuries last year, which is why his numbers weren't as good. They both play in the SEC, so they both play the same competition. Hendon Hooker had better completion, better quarterback rating, better stats. The only downside is his age, essentially. I'm not sure whether the Titans, like Adam says, I'm not sure whether Titans need to go this high on him. But this is where I did say that maybe Schragers been listening to us. We all rate him, you know.
Right, well, we're 33 minutes into the show and we've only done 11 picks, so let's pick up the pace a little bit here. Houston Texans with their second pick. They held out on their quarterback, but they went and took one, Will Levis. So they traded away from the 2 spot down to the 4 spot. They took Tyree Wilson, according to Schragers. And now, Andrew, they have taken Will Levis here, so that is the 5 quarterbacks going in the top 12. How believable do you think 5 quarterbacks in the top 12 is?
Very high up. Lots have been saying, I think 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, I think might be quarterbacks. I think that there could be a bit of buzz, and you know how people get on draft night, and you know the panic when it comes to quarterbacks, where people just move up regardless of if they're good enough or not. The Hendon Hooker one is the one where would he creep in? But if, like I say, if people see what we see and buy into it, maybe. But yeah, I mean, if you move back and get Will Levis here, then you know it's good business. I think Adam has talked on this a lot when we've been talking about the quarterbacks. If Richardson goes, where does Will Levis fit? I think when we talk about the quarterbacks, we just go, it's rated, this guy's 1, this guy's 2, this guy's 3, this guy's 4. But when you talk about their attributes, Adam always talks about where the fit for him. And there's not a lot of teams that want this style of quarterback with just the big cannon arm. Yes, he's got the mobility and stuff. So I think this is why we're seeing Will Levis fall on boards now, based on fit, because he fits at the Colts. And then where does he fit after that? So pick 12, if he's not gone yet, that's a no-brainer for me, for them to give him a shot.
And in Schragers' world, the Texans will be walking away with DeForest Buckner, Will Levis, and Tyree Wilson, which I think Texans fans would be pretty pleased about, to be fair. New York Jets will move on to their pick at number 13, Adam, and we've got them taking Broderick Jones, offensive tackle out of Georgia. If Aaron Rodgers gets there, he is going to want a strong offensive line. They've very heavily invested their offensive line over the last few years. The Jets, it's not entirely paid off. I love this pick. What do you think?
Yeah, it makes sense. It's the right position. It depends who you prefer. I mean, Paris Johnson's there as well, so that's the other one. I probably would be going Paris Johnson, but I mean, it's really, you know, personal preference. I think they're both very good, and they need to go O-line in order to protect Rodgers. And the other thing as well, of course, is the run game is so important to them with the likes of Breece Hall and Michael Carter, so they need to do everything they can to help that.
Move on to 14 with Andrew and the New England Patriots taking the second cornerback off of the board, and that is Devin Witherspoon out of Illinois, cornerback here. Patriots notoriously don't draft well in the first round, but they would if this is how it fell, with Schrager predicting this, the Patriots would be rubbing their hands right, Andrew. I mean, this is a great pick.
Yeah, it's one of two picks. It's the one that I've been torn with, and it all depends who's there on the night. It's cornerback or offensive tackle for me. They're the two main areas that they need. So for me, Paris Johnson's still on the board. So I'd maybe go him for this pick. But if Gonzalez or Witherspoon, whichever one's on the board as well, it's so hard to turn away one of those guys as well, because they are the top two. I mean, I've got another guy that I have highly rated that's not going to be in the first round as well, but it's Witherspoon or Gonzalez. So if they're there, it's hard to turn them down. But equally, if Paris Johnson's available at this, I can't turn him down either. But it's cornerback or offensive tackle, isn't it?
Be a very interesting move if they went for a quarterback, because they have been hosting some of them. So you never know what the Patriots may do on the night. Number 15, I can see why you're so ecstatic, Adam, and it has felt you to talk about his pick. Jackson Smith and Jigba, wide receiver at Ohio State. Packers not drafting a first rounder since the early noughties. Aaron Rodgers out the building, well, not yet out the building, but maybe out the building, and then they go and draft one at 15. And how ecstatic would you be with this pick?
Yeah, I mean, it's the receiver you want, isn't it? And you know, it helps that I'm in a very nice position in our Dynasty Fantasy League to get him as well. So I mean, that's even better. Yeah, you would. I'd love to see him there. I think it makes complete sense. They need to get another receiver in there. At the moment, it's just really Watson and Dubs. So you need another receiver to do something. I like the fact that he's gone away from tight end. I think I get why a lot of people have gone tight end, but I think that that's something you can do later on down the line. Whereas you won't be able to get this sort of talent at wide receiver later on down the line. So I think for that reason, it makes complete sense. Will the Packers do it with Paris Johnson on the board? No, don't be silly.
But do you not think that this is like the final dagger in Rodgers, isn't it? That they never.
Well, yeah, I mean that's
This is flipping the finger when you're walking out the door, sort of.
Yeah. So I do think Schrager's seen that he's on the board, and you know, this will get them going a little bit.
He's played to the crowd, hasn't he? He's played to the crowd. Let's move on to 16 with the Washington Commanders, and they are taking here Dalton Kincaid out of Utah, tight end. First tight end off the board for anyone who doesn't know about any of the tight ends, because it is a position that maybe you haven't heard much about. We did do some videos on positions and previewed them for the guys that are coming into the draft, the quarterbacks, the running backs, the wide receivers, and the latest one is the tight end. So go and check that out. Andrew, very hot on Dalton Kincaid. An area that their Commanders do probably need to improve in. I mean, the Commanders could go a lot of ways here, I think. So I don't hate this at all for the Commanders.
No, we did. I think we did a mock recently that had them having the tight end, and we all said, yeah, it's an area they need to address. Logan Thomas has struggled to stay fit. He's now in his 30s. They definitely need to address this. Getting Sam Howell some weapons. You know, they've got some nice receivers in Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson. They got Brian Robson and Antonio Gibson. So this is the area that they would need. I'm still looking at it going, Paris Johnson still on the board and helping Sam Howell. O-line would also help him, but I fully get this. They need a tight end. Either Mayer or Kincaid is going to be such a great pick for anyone in the first round that this is an area that Commanders need to address. So don't mind it, quite like it for them. Just would think they'd address O-line before.
And I quite like the tag that they've got there. Eric Bieniemy knows a thing or two about utilising the position, given his history in Kansas City. I mean, if there's one coach or coordinator you'd want to work under being a tight end, it is Eric Bieniemy. So I'm sure Dalton Kincaid would be loving this as well. We move on to pick 17, the Pittsburgh Steelers pick. I mean, I think I should probably talk about this one here. The fall of Paris Johnson, Ohio State tackle, Campbell guard flexibility as well, has stopped. He says, I have Pittsburgh passing on Joey Porter's son, which just doesn't feel right. Oh, well, he is playing to the crowd there. If this works out on the night like this, I am very pleased. Very, very pleased. Like you said, both of you have said that Paris Johnson could have easily gone in the last 6 picks, let alone, in the top of the first round. If Johnson does fall to this level for the Steelers, I'd be really happy. There's a lot of people have us taking corner here a lot of the time. But Johnson's just a player that you can't miss on, especially when the Steelers have got to really work their O-line. Do you both agree that this would be a pretty decent pick here for us?
I think it's a really good pick. But do you not have a bit of a history of picking defensive players with your first round picks?
I feel like you're probably right. We have got that history, and it would, if we get to our pick on the night, I would be going, I really want that tackle or that guard if someone like Paris Johnson goes, but I wouldn't be confident we take him. I wouldn't be confident at all. I think we've gone a bit flashy with our picks a lot of time. Like last year, as much as it was great taking Kenny Pickett, in that second round, I really wanted us to take an O-lineman, and then we took Pat Freiermuth, which, has worked out very well for us. He is very good, but that was a luxury pick in my mind when we should have gone corner, or I thought we should have gone corner or O-line last year. And I think I'm still proven right because we're still trying to solidify their positions.
Fred, if you don't want Ohio State's left tackle, you could just wait for your second pick and get Ohio State right tackle and DeJuan Jones, who's like 6'8" and like 300 and something pounds.
Well, that's what I mean. It's got to be corner and O-line, these picks. I don't mind which way round it is. It just sort of depends where the board falls on the night. If in my mind, the better ones on the O-line, offensive line have gone by this point, the really high-end guys, I'd go corner, best corner available, and then I'd take the best O-line available the next pick. It just really depends how the ball falls on the night. We'll move on to number 18, the Detroit Lions, taking Joey Porter Jr. So if he doesn't go to the Steelers, he definitely goes to the Lions in the next pick. Jalen Carter, now Joey Porter Jr. Obviously, like you said, they've traded away Jeff Okudah. Have got some still pretty decent cornerbacks there, but it's Andrew who's doing the odds tonight, isn't it? Joey Porter going to the Lions. This is a pretty decent pick. I think I like Schragers' pick here for them.
Yeah, I mean, we've all had this the other way around, haven't we? I think lots of us have had corner and then defensive, but they've just flipped it and still got value. It doesn't really matter which way round they do it. We've seen that on every mock draft. Flip it round, you get it this way. Other way around, you get Gonzalez and Kalansi or Kalijah Kancey or something like that. So either way, the Lions are going to get 2 stud players on the defense, aren't they? Come this draft, so it doesn't matter which way around they get it.
Yeah, they're like weirdly, it sounds really stupid. They're like the only team I'm not worried about picking, but like badly in a way, because they seem to have something going on there, and I feel like
the 2 positions they want are the 2 positions
are really good.
There's massive value in the first round,
and their picks are in good spots. They're in if this pick was in the low 20s, I'd be a little bit like, oh, who are they going for? Maybe a trade. But this sort of pick here and the pick in the higher end, I think it works really well for them. Pick 19, we go on to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, taking cornerback in Deonte Banks. They brought back Jamel Dean and Sean Murphy-Bunting. Oh, sorry, Sean Murphy-Bunting went to the Titans, like Peter Schragers just said there. I think the O-line is certainly a focus for the Buccaneers, and a lot of people are not, taking away that maybe a quarterback might be as well in a way. But Deonte Banks going here, Adam, they'd be pretty ecstatic with that pick, I think, as well, for what talent for Banks could be the corner out of Maryland.
Yeah, I think with all the quarterbacks going, we were talking about where are good spots for Will Levis. This is one of them, but if he's already gone, obviously that's not available to them. You mentioned O-line, the best 3 O-line guys have gone. It really depends if you want to take a bit of a stab with Darnell Wright and go pick him quite high or not. So corner kind of makes sense, especially as you said, Murphy Bunting's not there. So he's a good player. Banks is someone who's done well in college, and it makes sense for him to go there, and it helps them get a bit younger in that defense as well, which is what they need to do.
They're certainly in a transition period, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I feel like. And it is interesting with Schragers saying, but Will Levis and or Hendon Hooker on the board still, it could be certainly a possibility. I think that's very true as well. I think if they do get to that point on the night, that could be, the Bucs may even trade up. That wouldn't shock me either. We're going to pick 20 with the Seattle Seahawks, their second pick of the night. Then here they've got Lucas Van Ness. We said that, Andrew, this would be, if this worked out how it would, taking Richardson with the 5th and then getting someone like Lucas Van Ness with the 20th, which I assume you sort of said because you knew what was coming in a way. Again, Seahawks fans would be ecstatic with this draft, right?
Yeah, it's perfect, isn't it? Like we said, there's still other names that we've mentioned that are still there as well. So if Van Ness, who has got a lot of hype about him because he is versatile, if he does go to one of the teams prior, still value at this position of names that we've mentioned that are still there. So the fact that Van Ness is here as well is perfect. And it's, again, 2 perfect picks. It's essentially, again, like I said, it's the reverse of what I had, like the Lions. It's the reverse of what I had in my first ever draft kind of thing. I had them taking interior with their first and quarterback with their second. So, perfect day for them. No one's going to be unhappy with this.
This one's been an interesting one because Peter Schragers, like he said, it was crazy, and I think there has been crazy moves, but I think all 3 of us have justified a lot of the moves very well and could definitely see it sort of happening. I don't think there's anything. I know I was against the Bijan Robinson pick, but I don't think it's out the realms. It's just I don't think that's what they should do. Like it's definitely entirely possible that could happen. So it's been a really interesting one so far. We move on to the 21 pick with the Los Angeles Chargers, and a lot of people have had sort of a running back going here with whatever's going on with Austin Eckler, but second tight end to come off the board tonight with Notre Dame's Michael Mayer, saying again another offensive weapon for Justin Herbert there. Not as explosive as says Kyle Pitts, but a highly regarded pass catcher. Adam, this would certainly be a coup for the Chargers to get someone like this.
Yeah, I think we can safely say it seems like Eckler will be staying now. So that, like you say, it takes running back off the board. It feels a little bit of a luxury pick, to be brutally honest. I don't quite know why they're going for a tight end. Personally, I think the defense needs a bit more help. I'd probably be looking at maybe like a linebacker or a defensive back in some form. Most of the corners have gone, but this could be, we've mentioned him before many times, and he doesn't seem to pop up in many mocks in the first round, but it does feel a bit Brian Branch, like that wouldn't be the worst idea in the world to have someone like him go there. But he, as Schragers says, it is another weapon for Justin Herbert, and I don't know if it's the offense that's the problem. I think it's more the defense.
I'd argue that they don't need a tight end. I know Gerald Everett's not the youngest guy, but they've got Gerald Everett. They've got Donald Parham, who played well bar his injury that he had a couple of years ago. And they brought Trey McKitty in last year as a rookie who had a bit of buzz about him before the draft. I'd argue that they will need to look at replacing Keenan Allen and Mike Williams very soon. And we've only seen Jackson Smith-Njigba come off the board. So you say luxury pick. If it's a luxury pick, take a wide receiver. I don't think you need a tight end just yet. And we also said that this is quite deep for decent tight ends. Save it for later.
I definitely agree with that. We move on to the pick 22. So I say 2022 then. And it's Baltimore Ravens taking Darnell Wright, the Tennessee offensive tackle. Again, a lot of buzz around Lamar Jackson, whatever is going to go on with him. And I would say there's a few holes on the Ravens team, but maybe nothing that is garish, I suppose. I think it's just reinforcement for the future. And how much of a reinforcement is this for Andrew? Because Darnell Wright is someone who we're very excited about, to say the least, aren't we?
Yeah, he's the next one off the board at that position. We like him on the podcast. I do think they've got a strong O-line already. But it is aging. There's not I don't think there's a single bad name on the whole of their O-line. I've just got it up and had a quick look. But like I say, it is aging a little bit, and I'm not sure whether they've fully addressed wide receiver. Again, we've just spoke about the wide receivers that are still on there. Yes, they brought in Odell Beckham Jr., but when's the last time he managed to stay fit? And we've all said outside that, it's Bateman and then no one. So I would think that, again, maybe wide receiver, youngster, how much has Beckham got in the tank? Is it 1 year? Is it 2 years? Get in a youngster to go with them. I think if they're using Bateman downfield or Odell for whatever, there's a couple of speedsters still there. I know you guys are real hot on Zay Flowers. Get the ball in his hands and let him go. Then that would be perfect at this point. Or Jordan Addison's still on the board. I forgot about that.
Jordan Addison's still on the board, right?
So yeah, I'm understand it. It works. It good for the future. They do like to run the ball. So O-line is good for them. I just think there's other areas for them to address.
I think cornerback is something they need to look at as well, because there's a few older players on there. My cat certainly enjoyed the Darnell Wright pick because she was meowing away at that one, so she completely agrees with what the Baltimore Ravens are doing. As a Steelers fan, I think that's a decent pick for them. It's something we'd worry about, I suppose, in the future, but I trust our defense in that situation. Then we go on to the Minnesota Vikings at number 23. And after all the wide receiver talk, we just had Jordan Addison out of USC goes to the Minnesota Vikings, obviously without Adam Thielen, who's gone to the Carolina Panthers, with the best wide receiver in the locker room there for Jordan Addison in the league with Justin Jefferson. How lethal would this matchup be with Addison and Jefferson on for that Vikings offense, Adam?
Yeah, I hate the pick as a Packers fan and love the pick as this is basically the Vikings doing the Eagles, Brown and Smith, isn't it? That this is essentially what this is. So it makes complete sense. They need someone in there because Thielen has gone to Carolina. They haven't really got the depth, so it makes sense that's what they want to do. Addison, same sort of body type as Devonta Smith, can kind of tell you that it can be done. So yeah, really like the pick.
It's a really strong pick, and what a menacing offense that could be in the Minnesota Vikings camp there. We move on to pick 24, and that is the Jacksonville Jaguars. And Adam, we very pleased to see the Brian Branch fall has not fell too far. And the Jaguars could go a number of ways with this pick, couldn't they, Andrew? And Schragers, again, is giving them here an absolute beast of a player. I mean, this is a very, very good pick for the Jags if they got them 24 here.
Yeah, I think we've all been putting cornerback in here. I think Deontay Banks is the one that we've all got at this spot. So it makes sense with him already gone off the board that Brian Branch, such a versatile talent, can play in a couple of various positions in that defensive backfield. So makes sense, like the pick. There's no other O-lineman which is of a standard good enough for them to pick at this point. And Brian Branch for me is shouldn't be that low. So that's a steal at 24 for the Jags for me.
They've been drafting very well in the last few years. The Jags have really got something going on there. And we move on to, I'll get both of your points. We'll move on to Adam first. We've got another wide receiver coming off board, Zay Flowers, who we are all quite hot on. The Giants, I think, are in desperate need of another wide receiver. I don't think the room is strong enough there. Andrew obviously misses out here on Jackson Smith-Njigba. We're going to your team, Adam. I missed out on Jordan Addison. But Zay Flowers going here. Do you think that the Giants could really benefit from having someone like Zay in the team?
Yeah, I think he's different, isn't he, compared to anything else that they have at the moment. I do feel like they need a big-bodied wide receiver, though. That's the only thing. So to me, Quinton Johnson makes a bit more sense. But I think I'm right in saying that there isn't anyone there that has the speed that Flowers has. So in that respect, it's something that is different, and maybe that will help them. I just don't think it's necessarily the right one.
And Andrew, I mean, playing off on that, I suppose, like when we think about the speedsters in the league, they tend to have the quarterback that has the cannon of the arm to get the ball down the field to them, whereas Jones doesn't have that, and Jones would definitely benefit from having a big body where he can high point the ball a lot more in shorter areas. Would you be happy with this pick on the night if this was to happen?
Not really. I've Everybody's got Zay Flowers locked in at this point for us. Most of the mock drafts have either got a centre, bizarrely, or Zay Flowers. I'm hoping Jordan Addison falls to us, but when I looked at it and I keep seeing Zay Flowers in there, for me, we've got Wandale Robinson who plays in that position, who, when he was fit, was great at that position. I think Adam's right in saying we need someone on the outside, but this would address to me, if we do go down this line, that we're not bothered about throwing the ball down the field. We're just bothered about getting the ball into receivers' hands and letting them do their thing, running the ball and getting it in people's hands. And if you want to get the ball in someone's hands and let them do the rest, this is the perfect pick, really, for Giants in that retrospect, because that's what he does. So if we go down this line, we're not looking to throw the ball deep, which I think we could do with someone, because I do think, Campbell, Robinson, Shepherd, they all are kind of in that mix of competing for the same position, whereas you've got maybe Hodgins at a push and Slayton downfield as the only options over the top. So,
feels a bit more of the same, doesn't it?
Yeah. But like I said, if we are not looking at throwing it down the field, then it makes sense. Get it in his hands, let him do his thing.
We move on to pick 26, and we have got the Dallas Cowboys taking running back here, Jahmyr Gibbs. Now, I've not seen many mocks with Jahmyr Gibbs going in the first round. Running back, actually, after our preview of the positions, I thought Jahmyr Gibbs was good, but I was a lot more hyped about him after we talked about him, because I probably didn't expect how big a talent he could be. The Cowboys obviously letting go of Zeke Elliott this year. Andrew, again, in your division as well, you see Bijan Robinson go in, then Jahmyr Gibbs go to, and you took a wide receiver you thought you didn't necessarily need. Would the anger get, would you be boiling over at this point if this happens on the night? Schragers really done you a number here.
Really, mate, yeah. Hence why I knew this was coming. I love Gibbs. I think he's definitely round one talent. I think whoever gets him is getting a phenomenal, everyone's locking him as sort of like an Alvin Kamara. I think he can be that and better. I think he's got a bit more about him than maybe Kamara, because Kamara's more just his hands. This guy's good running the ball as well. So this is a fantastic pick. They had Elliott and Pollard at work. They've lost Elliott, so now it's just Pollard. So they do need that. We saw they won games when they started using the run game more on the tight ends and not putting it in Dak's hands to win games. So they do need another running back. And this guy is insane. And they do like a flashy pick. They do like a weapon and a flashy pick. So this makes sense for them. I think tight end could be a position that they maybe address at this point, because they got Jake Ferguson, haven't they, where there's a bit of buzz about him, but who knows? This would annoy me.
This has got the Jones family written all over it, this sort of pick. And Schragers, I think Schragers probably onto something with this pick, to be honest with you, because they do love splashing a pick on a high-profile player, and Jahmyr Gibbs is certainly that. We go to pick 27, and that is held by the Buffalo Bills, who have gone for edge rusher Myles Murphy from Clemson. Adam, he's got it in here, if the Bills are a team now who are in the AFC Championship conversation year on year, the Super Bowl picture year on year, in them games you're going to be playing against the best, like Patrick Mahomes, like Joe Burrows. It's something they struggled with a little bit, rushing the quarterback, and then they brought in Von Miller. Obviously, didn't stay fit the whole year. They've got some decent defensive pieces, but how much do you think Myles Murphy then puts them even more into that competition? Because I think this is a bit of a luxury pick for the Bills. I think they should really be looking at their cornerback room.
I think it's something that obviously it would help them on the D line, like edge. I think it would help them. There's no doubt about that, and I understand the logic of like you need to have a strong rotation in order to be able to do something here. I have been saying for ages that I think O-line is a big issue for the Bills. I think that was the reason that they kind of crumbled and Josh Allen couldn't get away quick enough, because they just had too many. Once you're going up against them really good teams, it's just too hard to do it all the time. So I would probably be going that way. But I do understand why Schragers picked Murphy. I just don't think that it's where I would be going personally. Again, as you said, corner it is another area that you could argue that they need a bit more depth at. But I do wonder if they might address that later on down the line. It's just, I get it, but it's just not where I would go.
I don't get it.
I don't get it either.
I'd argue they've probably got the best rotation of edge rushers in the league. They've got Gregory Rousseau, Von Miller, Shaq Lawson, Boogie Basham, AJ Epinesa, all young.
Ed Oliver down the middle.
Von Miller.
But then you've got another one. I think the thing is that everyone has seen with the Eagles how to do it. You need to rotate these guys, and if you don't rotate these guys, you get what happens to Von Miller. And he gets injured, and then all of a sudden a really, really strong guy has gone, and so now you don't have that depth anymore. So I can understand the logic behind it. Like I say, just for me personally, I think there's more places where they need to put more depth into it. Which is why I'd say O-line.
If I was D-lining, I'd want to be sort of setting up to replace Ed Oliver at some point in the interior rather than the edge, because we've only seen one interior and Van Ness who can play both go so far, so there's definitely still value there. Whereas, like I said, they've got loads of edge rushers.
We'll go on to 28 with the Cincinnati Bengals, if I'm not mistaken, and they have taken tight end Darnell Washington from Georgia. So not only do we have 5 quarterbacks go, we've had 3 tight ends go in the first round as well. I mean, Schragers has pulled out all the stops here. And they did sign Irv Smith Jr. in free agency, who I really like, but has maybe not splashed onto the scene as much as we'd have hoped for, like at the Vikings. This just gets a bit ridiculous, doesn't it, with the Bengals now? You have Irv Smith Jr., you'd have Darnell Washington, you'd have Jamar Chase, you have T. Higgins, you've got Tyler Boyd. I mean, Joe Mixon. They don't have Samaj P. Ryan anymore, I don't think, unless he did re-sign in the offseason. I can't remember now. It's just more arrows in the quiver for Joe Burrow here, isn't it, Andrew?
Yeah, I think if Kincaid or Mayer are still on the board, then I'd definitely be looking at that position. I think that would really improve them. I do think tight end is something they need to replace. Now they have lost. Why can I not remember his name?
Hayden Hurst.
Hayden Hurst. I was going to say Hunter Henry. I was like, it's not Hunter Henry. I know it.
It's the H's. It's the double H's. That's what Fraser.
I really like them taking Gibbs. Obviously not on the board for Schragers at this point, but I really like them taking Gibbs, not knowing what's happening with Joe Mixon and the future with him. And they haven't got really anybody outside to sort of come in and replace now. P. Ryan's gone, so I like them going Gibbs at this point if he's available. Outside of that, again, it's probably a bit of a luxury pick for them. They can kind of go anywhere, best player available if they wanted, because it's just strengthening their team at wherever. So, yeah, I mean, why not, eh?
Okay, we're going into the home stretch of our picks now. Number 29, going to the New Orleans Saints, and they take Jonathan Mingo, wide receiver out of Mississippi. I was reading, it's quite small font. I thought it said Missouri, but it is Mississippi indeed. Andrew would definitely like this because he thinks this is a player that could be really successful in the NFL. Adam, and had him I saw in the social media on his our Instagram story that he's his wild card to have a real successful future in the NFL. The Saints that have a lot of names at wide receiver, but not exactly much going on there. A lot of injuries. Maybe, the Michael Thomas MVP year was pretty much the best you've ever seen him, and he's gone incredibly downhill after that. Do you think the Saints will zig this way in the draft?
This feels like a little bit of a reach to me. I think it sounds like he's interviewed very, very well, and he's gone down very well with a lot of the coaches. He's clearly, you've seen the tape. He's clearly a decent receiver. I wouldn't have him as a first rounder. I think he's the idea that he's going before Quentin Johnson is a little bit strange to me, I have to say.
Really?
I like him. I think he's really good. I just don't think he's a first rounder, and I'd be surprised if any of the teams take him first round, to be honest.
Andrew Hayes, I can see if we're steering now.
He's our wild card or our steal because we think he's an exceptional talent he can get later on. We weren't locking him in as above Quinton. You know, if you look at the list that are part of our top 5, Quinton Johnson is in the top 5. You know, this guy is a guy that I think if you're getting him later round, you've got an absolute steal. But I do think there's a lot of versatile, a lot of different type receivers in here, and he is bigger and he's quick. So we did say there's a lot of talented little guys coming in the second round. So maybe Schragers just really fallen in love with him and thinks, like I do. There's players that I fall in love with and I overvalue them massively. So he's obviously just done that. But yeah, Quinton Johnson's still on the board. But what's happened there?
I mean, he's fallen. Whether Schragers got a bit of a problem with him or doesn't think he's the right talent, unless he's fallen into one of these 2 picks, I suppose. But the Philadelphia Eagles here at number 30, taking Bijan Robinson, running back out of Texas with their 10th pick. They've taken Will McDonald, the edge, out of Iowa State. Adam was literally just saying about the Eagles' rotation with edge rushers, Andrew, and you hate the Bijan pick, you hate the Jameer Gibbs pick, obviously, for your team. Would you be hating the Will McDonald pick as well for the Eagles?
No, they can have that. That's
so that's what you think of Will McDonald then?
No, I like him. I think he's late round 1 at a push, early round 2 for me. I think he's of that talent, so he's definitely good enough. I just think if you're not an Eagles, if you're a neutral, again, I think they need interior. And we've said there's still Kalijah Kancey's still there. Brian Breesy, for me, who I think is a great talent, is still there. Adi Abadiwari's still there, and that people are quite hot on as well. So I do think they've got to address and stop that run and shore up the interior D line. So I think there's more value at that than edge rusher, which we've said they're talented at. They're fine.
Let's go to 31 and the last pick of the draft. Obviously, not 32 picks in the first round this year due to the I was about to say McDonald, but obviously we just said Will McDonald. That's why, because of the Miami Dolphins having to forfeit their pick in this last one. And the Quinton Johnston fall happens. It was like you both talked about him so much because you knew this was going to happen. But he was going to be in the first round and the fall did stop. The Chiefs, a team that obviously has a very high power offense all the time with Patrick Mahomes, but is lacking in that wide receiver room. How much TCU wide receiver is a big body, and he could certainly add a lot to this offense with the Kansas City Chiefs, which doesn't necessarily need more versatile ways of beating people, does it?
Yeah, I mean, do we need to give them any more help than what they already have? I mean, it is a bit mental. If he's still on the board at this point, they're laughing their heads off. They really are. They've got themselves a wide receiver who is different to what any of their other wide receivers are as well, and that's the one thing that will help them at that sort of physical presence that they just don't really have. They have a gap in the receiver room with Juju having gone. So I think it makes perfect sense to go for this. The only thing you could argue is maybe they should be going for edge or they should be going for O-line, although I feel like their O-line is pretty set now after that little sort of mishap of the last couple of years. So I think edge, maybe someone like a Kalijah Kancey there would make sense as well. But I think if you've got Johnson on the board, who is arguably most people's wide receiver 2 or 3, and you've managed to pick him up at this point, then I think you've done pretty well.
Well, and that rounds out our the mock of Peter Schragers. Thank you, Mr. Schragers, for doing a mock finally. We've thoroughly enjoyed doing it. And thank you all for watching that video with us. I know it's been quite a long video, but there is just so much to talk about, and it is good fun. And we've been really enjoying it. We are now officially a week away till the NFL draft. As of today, we are a week away. Like I've said a lot of times already, it is late on the Thursday night, midnight, 1 o'clock it will start. You will want to book Friday off if you are going to stay up and watch. I'm sure you can catch the highlights next day if not. But we've got a lot more coming from the Franchise Tag Podcast before the official NFL draft. We're looking forward to it very much. Make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and look at our social media as well as the written word on our website. There's a lot of articles leading up to the draft day. enjoy the rest of your week. I'm sure you enjoyed this video, and we'll be back with stuff from the Franchise Tag podcast very soon.